American students continue to lag behind their peers in science and math. Leaders in education and business are gathered in San Diego this week to talk about how to change that as California schools prepare to implement the next generation science standards in 2016. Joining me to talk about the new standards are Christina Trecha of the San Diego Science Project and Mohammed Chaudhry, who sits on the board of Californians dedicated to Public Education Foundation. Christina, what's the purpose of the new science standards, and how will students learn science differently once they're implemented?
Well, anytime there are new standards, there's kind of big three pieces. The how do you teach it, or sorry, how do you teach it, and we have what do we know about how people learn, and then the issue of equity. So those are the three main pieces in the next generation science standards. And a huge piece that's different is how we're asking teachers to think about science as a process and a practice instead of this linear, I test my hypothesis, I go to work, I check a box, and I go home and eat dinner, that it's this creative, dynamic process that repeats and that can go through the whole school year instead of just on Thursday for 30 minutes. And an example of this could be these beautiful skulls I have brought. Right now in elementary school, if you are lucky enough to get some science, you might say, I learned about skulls, I read about them in a book, and I know that there are eye sockets, I know that I have a skull, but in my work in the teacher professional development, we want teachers to think differently as in what are my local resources to think about skulls, what is a skull, and what's an adaptation? I could go to the San Diego Natural History Museum and I can check out these skulls from the Loan Library, and my students can look at this pelican skull. We can then go to the beach and go on a hike. Then we can go back to the museum and look at their skulls exhibit and look at adaptation across the animal kingdom and go talk about the skeleton and start an engineering project by the end of the year that brings in all of what they've learned about structure and function to solve some kind of problem. So it's this more holistic, creative, engaging, challenging to teach standards.
So these standards are going to be implemented in a couple of years. Mohammed, why don't American students perform as well as their counterparts in other countries?
You know, that's a great question, and I think one of the few challenges in terms of as adults we're not doing right. One is we try to go a mile wide and an inch deep in terms of what we want them to know. So if we were to teach all our California standards today in San Diego, it would take 30 years. We only have 12 years in our K-12 education system. So the next generation science standards changes that by going narrower and deeper. Fewer concepts, but understand them much more deeply. The second thing it changes is relevance. You know, the question that students ask, kids ask all the time is, when am I ever going to use this in real life? And connecting the dot in relevance is really important. Give you an example in high school. Currently in a biology class, that's a foreign language class. We inundate them with all these terms and memorizing all these Latin terms rather than falling in love with science, turning on the Bunsen burner and digging deep into skulls and other things. So making sure that we provide more relevance and connectivity in a deeper way, I think will change that, and as well as making sure our standards are research-based and we're able to compete with the rest of the world because...
well, I want to talk about that. So you're head of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. How have you seen the lagging in test scores and the lagging in interest? What evidence have you seen that that's affected America's competitiveness?
So first of all, there's such a severe shortage of talent. Every executive and CEO I talk to in Silicon Valley and beyond, they will hire as many engineers, as many computer scientists as they can find. And bar none, there's such a shortage. It's a shortage of 75,000 engineering jobs where they just can't fill every day. So that's one piece where we know there's a shortage. And now with global companies, they will go where the talent is. So they are setting up shop elsewhere, in India, in China, in other countries where the talent is. So we see it, and we see it every day.
Christina,
yes.
So women, girls, and minorities tend to not go into science. Why is that?
Well, it's a very complicated question that you're asking that we don't have one very sleek, specific answer to. But a big issue and a big challenge to that is access to engaging experiences that are also pushing you towards asking big questions and thinking outside of the school day too, and experiences, and also the culture of being in those fields. So at UC San Diego, there's a STEM initiative that's campus-wide, and there are people on the campus saying, why isn't my department more diverse? And you know, I'd like to talk to young people and let them know how exciting this work is so that they can know high school, middle school, elementary, you can actually join us in this work. Everybody's welcome, and the more different viewpoints and experiences you bring in, the better your approaches are to questions and problems. And I think we all know that, working collaboratively as adults, we don't get to pick the group that we work with. So in classrooms of the future, so with these next generation science standards and Common Core, students are going to be working with all sorts of different people, and the more that we can increase diversity in general thinking in any field is going to be great.
We've got to close it there. Yeah. Christina Mohammed, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.